Have you ever looked at a retirement calculator online and seen that perfect smooth line that just goes up and up until you're 90? It looks great, it's comforting, and honestly, it's probably a lie. The problem with most financial plans is that they assume the world's a predictable place. They assume you'll get that same return every year like clockwork. But we know that in the real world it's a roller coaster. We know that the order in which you get your returns, especially right when you retire, can be the difference between a comfortable life and running out of money. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on a tool that treats your future like the real world is his. It's called a Monte Carlo Simulation. It's basically a stress test that runs your life through 10,000 different versions of your future to see if your plan survives. Let's head to the video session and see why probability is much more valuable than a prediction.
So here's the big question. How can you really be sure your retirement plan will hold up in the real world? I mean, we spend decades saving, right? But planning for a future that's, well, totally uncertain, that's probably one of the biggest financial headaches we all have to deal with. Okay, let's dive into a really powerful tool that's built to tackle that exact problem. You've definitely seen this before, right? Maybe in some glossy brochure or on a simple retirement calculator online. Your whole financial future is laid out as this perfect, smooth line always going up. And yeah, it looks great. It's super comforting. But there's a huge problem with it. What if that whole, clean, predictable chart, what if its entire foundation is just wrong? That's the big question we're going to dig into. Because honestly, understanding this one flaw is the absolute first step toward building a financial plan that can actually, survive reality.
Okay, so let's break it down. What is this dangerous assumption? And why does it matter so much, especially as you start getting closer to that retirement finish line?
All right, here's the heart of the problem. That simple forecast, the one on the left, it assumes you get a nice, steady return, let's say 7% every single year, like clockwork. But we all live in the real world, the one on the right, and we know it's a total roller coaster. You have amazing years, you have terrible years, and there's absolutely no predicting the order they're going to show up in.
And that leads us to this really critical idea called sequence of returns risk. It sounds technical, but it's simple. It's not just about what your average return is over 30 years. What's way more important is when you get those good and bad returns. Think about it. Getting hit with a bunch of bad years right when you retire and start taking money out, that can be absolutely devastating. And it's a danger that simple forecast totally ignores. Okay, so if the simple forecast is broken, what's the fix? How do we actually plan for the messy reality of the market? Well, this is where a pretty amazing technique comes in. You can think of it like a stress test for your money. It's called the Monte Carlo Simulation, and this is where we make a huge mental shift. Instead of trying to predict one perfect, imaginary future, the simulation asks a much smarter question. If we run through thousands of possible futures, in how many of them does my plan actually work out? It basically injects all that real-world randomness we talked about to figure out the odds of success.
And the name is a huge clue, right? Monte Carlo? It's named after the world-famous casino in Monaco. Why? Because just like a roll of the dice, investing is all about randomness and probability, so the simulation embraces that idea. It uses the power of chance to give us a way more realistic picture of what could happen to our money.
So how in the world does a computer simulate thousands of different lifetimes for your portfolio? Let's kind of peek behind the curtain and see how this thing actually works.
It's basically a four-step dance. First, it figures out all the stuff we can't predict, like investment returns and inflation. Second, it runs your financial plan again and again and again, thousands of times. And each time it runs, it shuffles the deck and uses a totally new, random sequence of returns. Third, every single one of those runs creates a unique story, a different possible future for your wealth. And finally, the simple part. It just counts. It tallies up how many of those stories had a happy ending where you didn't run out of money.
And I'm not talking about just a handful of tries here. A really solid simulation will run your plan through 10,000 or even more potential futures. It's that massive number of simulations that gives the results their power. It's about throwing almost everything you can imagine at your plan to see if it breaks.
Now, all this randomness, it isn't complete chaos. It's guided by a basic statistical idea that you've probably seen before, the bell curve. Just think of it like this. The simulation knows that crazy good or crazy bad market years can happen, but they're pretty rare. Most of the time, returns are going to be somewhere around the average. This is what keeps the thousands of futures grounded in reality. There's actually a cool rule of thumb for this, called the 68-95-99.7 rule. All that means is the simulation makes sure that about 2/3 of the scenarios are pretty, well, normal. Then 95% of the scenarios will include some of the more unusual ups and downs. And pretty much all of them, 99.7%, will even account for those super rare extreme market events. It's how the test covers all the bases, from the probable to the barely possible.
Okay, the computer has crunched the numbers on thousands of lifetimes. So what? What do you actually get at the end of all this? What does it tell you?
Well, the key thing to know is that it doesn't spit out a single magic number for your future net worth. Nope. The most valuable thing it gives you is a percentage. It's called your probability of success. It's the simple answer to the question, out of all those thousands of simulations, how many times did I win?
So you might get a result like this one, an 85% probability of success. What does that mean? It means that in 8,500 of the 10,000 possible futures the computer ran, your plan worked. You didn't run out of money. This number is your confidence score, and it's a fantastic measure of how tough your plan is. For what it's worth, a lot of financial planners really like to see that score somewhere between 80 and 90%.
But here's where it gets really powerful. You can use this to play what if. What happens to my score if the market crashes the year I retire? What if I live to be 100? What if inflation goes crazy? It takes all those vague fears we have and turns them into actual numbers you can plan around.
Okay, this tool is amazing. But, and this is a big but, we have to be super clear about what it can't do. It's a powerful model for sure, but it is not a perfect copy of reality.
So, is it a crystal ball that perfectly predicts the future? Short answer, absolutely not. Any good advisor will tell you the same thing. Think of it as an exercise in probability, not prophecy. So let's be real about the limitations. First off, it's a model, not reality itself. Think of it like a blueprint, not the actual house. Second, the results are only as good as the numbers you feed it. Your assumptions about inflation, returns, all that stuff. Garbage in, garbage out. Third, it's built on that bell curve idea, which is usually true, but not always. And that leads to the last point. It can't predict those totally out-of-the-blue black swan events. Things like the 2008 financial crisis that break all the normal models.
And really, that brings us to the most important thing to remember. The Monte Carlo simulation is not a crystal ball. Its job isn't to predict the future. Its real job, its true value, is to help you build a plan that's tough enough, that's resilient enough to handle whatever that uncertain future throws at it.
I know that shifting from a perfect line to a probability score can feel a bit strange at first. We all want a crystal ball that tells us exactly what our bank account will look like in 30 years. But here is the truth. A crystal ball is a fairy tale. A Monte Carlo simulation is a blueprint. When you know that your plan works in 8,500 out of 10,000 possible futures, you aren't just hoping for the best, you're prepared for the worst. You're building a plan that is resilient enough to handle the roller coaster, the inflation spikes, and the rare black swan events. So when you look at your own retirement plan, ask yourself, is it built on a fantasy of 7% steady returns, or has it been through the 10,000 life stress test? If you want to see your own confidence score and find out if your plan is truly tough enough for the real world, reach out to us. Hit the subscribe button to keep demystifying these tools with me, and I'll see you in the next session.